We're in ninth grade lit, and we're doing our last review on Inferno. And take a look at the review sheet. And some of you did a great job. Some you don't have anything. So hopefully you know this. So let's go to the number 3. Notice it says the sins. Some of the sinners. That's kind of what's in all of these. The punishments and the mythological characters. Characters in 1 through 15. So we've done that, but we didn't do. I'm going to give you whatever there is in that last canto. If we don't get to it today, suddenly we have 15 minutes with nothing to do. We'll read the last canto. We can actually read it on Wednesday because I'm going to tell you what you need to know, and then be able to explain the sins and why each punishment is appropriate for each sin. So the list is not the only thing you need to look at. Make sure you look at everything else on the page. But we were going through the list. I don't know how far we got, but if you see anything at the end here, look at the list on number 3. If you see anything you need to know. They're so familiar and we're at different places. I can't remember what this class is not looked at. Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify, like, for Florence, that's just like where he's born. Like he's out there and stuff. That's only
basically, yeah. It can help you. See, the best thing to do is study a lot of things. Try to group things. Like if you're thinking of Florence, remember the exile, which took place when?
1302.
1301. What did? I don't know where'd you got 02. Well, I'd have to give you credit for it, but change it. The 1301. I don't know why it says 1302. If you studied it and you give it to me, but I'd like you to know the right one. Yes.
Do you have to know when he said the poem, like what year he said it in?
That's on here. That's 1300. See, it's at the bottom, number 4. So the poem takes place in 1300. So he's operating in the poem before he was exiled, but he wrote it during his exile. So he's writing it from the point of view that he doesn't know he's going to be exiled, except so many people in hell tell him he's going to be exiled. But he uses that in the story. Yeah.
The
Gibelines, yeah.
And the guilds.
Guilds, yeah.
And the blacks and whites. Does one line up with one and the other line up?
No. The guilds are subdivided into the blacks and whites. And we don't know anything about the political difference between blacks and whites. All we know is that it was a family feud that split initially, and there were probably reasons for the feud, but you don't need to know. I don't know what they are. So you do need to know the 3 basic differences between the Gibelines and the Guelphs. If you learn one, then you know the other, because the other is the opposite. So start with the Gibelines. What are the 3 things that describe the Gibelines? Sort of.
Isn't it that they're part of the aristocratic party?
Right.
And they were against the papacy.
That's right.
And I don't know.
Well, that's a good start. I don't know that there is another. I remember I thought there was, we gave you 3 for 1, but you get the difference. So if you'll take the opposite of that, and Lolani, what can you add? That was it. Yeah, that was the other thing. Thank you. So if someone would take those things and in turn them, flip them, you've got the Guild Party. So what would be the Guild Party? Yeah.
It's a group of Lords who supported the Pope, and then
Oppose
uh,
the Emperor. Because the aristocrats or Ghibellines flipped that. They supported the Emperor, opposed the Pope. But what was their makeup? What kind of people were in that Guild Party? If the Ghibellines were aristocrats, yes.
Like the colored people?
Yeah, middle class. That's the first time in history that I think that term is beginning to be used. There was no middle class, you're either upper class or yes.
Did the Gulfs believe in, support of the papacy?
The Guelphs, yes. It makes them seem more religious, I don't know that they are, but then the aristocrats, they supported the emperor, more secular. When was Divine Comedy published? It's on there.
1314.
Right. And when did he die?
13.
Right. So he was able to see the publication, unlike Chaucer, who never saw his Henry Tale published. And he never finished it. This is a completely finished work of art. All right, how about go back to number 3 again. I remember we marked out Gurion and the rope girdle. If you didn't mark them out, you can do that. We didn't get that far. We also marked out panderers, seducers, and sorcerers. So anything else on there, you need to know who they are and what happened. Yes.
Who is Pluto?
Who? Pluto, we looked it up the other day. He's of course the god or the lord of the underworld. But we see him, I'm trying to remember where we saw him. Where was it?
It says a demon of wealth that guards the fourth circle of hell.
So the fourth circle is the what?
The circle of greed.
Of what?
Greed.
G-R-I-E-F? Greed. G-R-E-E-D. That's right, the spendthrifts and the hoarders. I don't think there's any particular association between him and that. I really don't. That's why I can't remember it usually. But remember, several things overlap. Pluto, Dis, and Satan all kind of refer to the same thing, but Dante has separated them so that we actually see them, and we don't see Dis except the city of Dis, but they kind of interact with each other. Carter.
Who's the heavenly messenger?
Yes, sorry.
He rebukes demons so that Dante and Virgil can enter death.
He did what?
He rebukes demons
Okay,
so that
right.
Dante and Virgil can enter death.
And he literally opens the door. He touches the door with his wand and it creaks open and Dante and Virgil, I'm sorry, this is gonna confuse you. I just think it's interesting, it doesn't creak open, they don't have to push it. As soon as he touches it, it flies open. Which, again, I think illustrates the power of God over the power of Satan, is what Dante is trying to show us. That Satan has no power to thwart God's will. Charlotte.
Who is Tycho, the Florentine?
Or Chaco.
Oh,
It means the pig. And remember, I have to look it up to see exactly what he said, and I'll do that right now, but I don't think it really matters what he said, but he talked to Dante about Florence. 3, isn't it 3? 4 is... Yeah, Chaco, I can't remember that he says anything specifically. Says Chaco, yeah, it says that he prophesied some of the disasters about to befall Florence. But basically, he's the first person who talks about Florence, because Dante asks him about Florence, and he can tell him about what's coming. Yeah,
was he like a glutton?
a glutton, yes. You know, you find it harder, maybe it's just me, to hear each other with this thing on? I'm having a harder time hearing us talk. Maybe it's just me.
Sometimes.
Praise the Lord that we won't have to use them next year, if possible. That by June 1st, the governor is going to eliminate most or all of the restrictions. So, I mean, we're gonna go through the school year with them. I don't have a problem with that. But, man, it would be great if we could come back next year and not have to use these. Yeah, Carter.
Who is Brian Pluto?
Giancarlo?
Yeah.
Anybody remember who he is? Notice who he's right next to in the list. If you're talking about Giancarlo, that's right. Yeah, so if you group them like that, it's just gonna be a lot easier to remember. He killed those two. I know it's against the law and everything. You can hardly blame him, but it is against the law. You can't kill people. All right, so let's assume you're finished with number 3. All right, no problem with number 3. It doesn't mean you don't need to study it.
What is the difference between the Furies and the Harpies?
All right, there are 2 different places. For one, the Furies, you associate the Furies with what? Yeah, Medusa on the wall of this. And all they do is threaten Dante with Medusa. That's all they do. Where are the Harpies? Yeah.
They're from Greek mythology, and they're in the force of the suicides. They're like breaking off the limbs.
That's right. Faces of women, the body of a bird, and they torment the trees. All right, so we haven't really looked at any of these and the other thing that I need or want to do is make sure you know what happens in the last stanza. If we have time, we'll actually read it or read part of it. Go back to the first one. One of the questions up there, I said it's on the board. How do we say 24? Where does that number come from? And I charted it or kind of diagrammed it up here. You include the vestibule. From the vestibule to number 6, that's 7 circles. And then if you add the 3 rings here, the 10 rings here, and the 4 regions here, that adds up to 24. So that may be one way also to remember how to group these things. Remember, to this point, number 5 is upper hell, 6 down is nether hell. 6 doesn't really belong here or here. 6 is kind of by itself. These are the sins of what? The first, or the 2 through 5 are the sins of what?
Leper.
Yes. 7 is the sin of, and the lion, and 8 and 9 are sins, what, Ben? Well, see, 6 is sort of in between all those. It's not really associated, I don't think it is, it doesn't seem to be. It's not really violence, except it's violence against doctrine. But, you know, they're not in the 7th circle. That's a separate circle, violence. So anyway, it's just kind of separate. Just keep that in mind. Yeah.
For the PowerPoint notes, like on the divisions of hell, it like instead of the vestibule, it includes like the city of Dis. So, like it says the first 5 circles and then the city of Dis instead of the vestibule.
Instead of what?
Instead of the vestibule, it talks about the city of Dis.
Well, are you looking at number 1?
Yeah.
Well, number 1 includes the vestibule. It says the vestibule, the 9 circles, the 3 rings, the 10 doges.
So would this city of Dis be one of the divisions?
Would be what?
One of the divisions?
No. It's part of the geography of hell, sort of, but it's not. In this way, Ben, it separates. I guess you could say it's a wall. It's a separation between upper and lower hell.
Yeah, that's what.
I mean that's the. Oh, notice panderers, simoniacs, and bearders. You can mark those out. We didn't get that far. And I will make sure. Try to make sure.
Panders and what?
Simoniacs and bearders. I would have liked to have read those, but we didn't get to it. I would like you to know, look at number 2. Look at the 5 rivers. You do need to know Cocytus and Lethe, even though we didn't read about those, except we might today. So just remember that was a part of, one of the digressions in the book where Virgil tells Dante about the little river and how it came from the statue of the man on the river on the island of Crete. So you do need to know those 5 rivers and what they're associated with. Like, I mean, the last 2 should be easy. Praguetus is what? The frozen river at the pit of hell. Lethe is what?
Goes to the overworld.
It goes from the underworld to the upper world, and it's a river of forgetfulness. But then look at the last 4. I don't know if I've asked you this. I'd kind of like you to know it. Cana, Antenor, Ptolemy, and Judeca. I don't think I'm going to ask you that. Just mark those out. Those are the 4 regions. You do need to know that the 9th circle of hell has 4 regions, and those are the 4 regions. You don't need to know the names, but you need to know who's in them, okay? So, 1, 2, 3, 4. Cana is, sorry, that's gone.
Bless you. Bless you.
Okay, Cana is the first circle, and the order of the circles, I just have to double check this, are family, country, guests, and lords. Those 4, you need to know that. So what are the 4 regions? We won't name them, but they are in that order. Family or kindred, the book calls them kindred. Country, guests, and lords. And the reason why would that matter? Because it's really interesting that betraying your family is less serious than betraying a guest in your house, which is, you see that in literature, you see it in the Bible, that it was a sacred principle. If somebody comes under your care, and as they get, whether you know them or not, if they come in your house, invited in, and whether you know them, they could be a complete stranger, you treat them better than you treat your family. I guess that's kind of Southern hospitality. Think about it. You know, we down south have this reputation of, being kind to people. Not, of course, it's not completely true, but it does make sense there. You remember the rationale behind that in the Bible? Why would you treat a stranger better than you treat your own family? Yeah.
Is it because there could be an angel in disguise?
That's right. You might be entertaining angels. There's a great song, Christian song by that name. That's they never knew. Of course, that happens in mythology. Zeus and somebody, Apollo, they masqueraded, and then of course it happens a couple of times in the Bible. Sorry.
Can you go over the Francesca Halo thing?
Yeah. Anybody want to tell that story? Yeah.
Francesca cheated on her husband, whose name is right there, Dion.
Hello. Oh, husband. Yeah, Giancarlo.
Giancarlo with his brother Paolo, and they both ended up in the city, in the circle of adultery.
Yeah. Loves. Yeah. And he ended up in the first circle of hell because she's family, right? She's his wife, so he betrayed the wife by killing her. Yeah, Charlotte.
Who was Giacomo and?
Yeah, anybody remember? How about,
Weren't they the 2 naked guys running in the 604s?
yeah, we call them profligates, because why? Remember why they're called that, Carter?
Because they wasted their money, and like Giacomo went to war so that he could die, so using like the wood of suicide.
Right.
And then Lano, he like sold into the state so that he gambled all of that money.
And so what they have in common, they're gamblers, they're vandals, they like to destroy things. It's a spirit of destruction. And even their own things. They just like to see something burn. They like to see something broken. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, some kids go through that phase where they like to break things, you know, they don't understand that's wrong, it's also illegal. But that spirit is what those guys represent. Just like to watch something break down. And instead of fixing things or making things, some people like to destroy things. For the sake of the thrill, it's just a thrill. And that's who they are. Corey.
For number one, what was the reason for the punishment of like the sodomites and the blasphemers? Cause like they were in sand and then blasphemers were like looking up at hell.
All right, yeah, let's go back to that. You got blasphemers, sodomites, and usurers. They're all in burning sand. The blasphemers are lying supinely, looking at who? At God, because that's primarily directly who they sinned against, by his name or by, like Campanius, he was telling God, you can't get me, you know, you can't stop me, and Zeus in the story stopped him, killed him. The sodomites are running in sand. I'm not sure about the running part, but what is that? Who else is running in hell?
The rest,
The rest of the people.
And who else is kind of moving around in hell?
the wind.
Well, yeah, a lot of people, I guess. I was thinking about the lustful being blown around. So maybe it should remind us of those, for whatever reason, they're looking at their own body, because if our body is a temple of God, then when we abuse our body, then we are not blaspheming, but we are violating God's natural law and moral law. And so that's why it's a sin. He just tells us flat out, that's a sin. We don't do it. And there are a lot of reasons, common sense would tell you, but their punishment is to run, be pelted by, like at Sodom, when the fire came down from heaven, and to look at the body against which they sinned. Remember, C.S. Eliot sort of talked about that in Murder Cathedral. Remember the chorus talked about what hell's like. It's void, it's empty. All they have to think about and is their own sin. That would be hell, wouldn't it? That's all you ever do for eternity. If that were enough, that would be enough punishment. To just contemplate your own, have to look at who you are and what you really are. Some people can't ever do that. They can't look at themselves honestly and say, man, that's me? I don't want to be like that. They don't want to ever go there. And so he got that right, Dante. Aristotle got that right. You know, he came up with a lot of this too. And then finally, the usurers, which we didn't read, they're sitting, and you didn't see this, but they're wearing a money pouch around their neck. And so they're looking at that money because obviously they sinned against money. Or what does money represent? Money represents making a living. So the way you make a living matters to God. There's certain things you can do, and there's certain things you should not do to make a living. You know, some things are illegal. You know, not all moral things are illegal. So, but if something's illegal, that's immoral. You get that? Yeah, Lily.
The wrathful, are those, like, I'm confused, what does that mean?
We use the word angry. All right, so is it to separate them from the violent? And you see the overlapping, it's hard to, people get violent because they're angry, you see? So there's some overlapping and you can't really separate them, but Dante does. So how can we remember them? Because some of them are fighting, but remember the two kinds. What are the two kinds? And we use the term passive and active. Yeah.
It's like the passive is people who got like really angry and wrathful and stuff, but they kept it to themselves.
Right.
And so like their punishment is they're in like the mud, but they're like being buried in it.
Yeah.
Like, kind of like their anger is. And then the active is like people who are also mad, but they're like, they lash it out and stuff, and so they're like above the mud.
Yeah, they're constantly fighting. Yeah. You ever woken up in the middle of the night angry about something? You could think, I can't wait till I see that person more. I'm going to tell them at 2 o'clock in the morning, you just can't get it off your mind. That's the sullen or the passive. And then, because the next day, you're not gonna tell them. You feel better in the morning, you kind of forgotten it, and you don't do it. But at 2 a.m., you're gonna do it. 2 p.m., you're not gonna do it. All right, the only other thing, and you can look at any of that list, and if you remember Beatrice, go over that. I mean, this is a pretty good list, if this is all you study. But it's really not all that's on the test, because you could know these. If it's just matching, yeah, probably, but if they're short answers, which there are, you got to express a little more knowledge of it than just identify. All right, I'm about to go into that unless there are any more questions. Yeah.
So, like, do we need to know all the boats and boats and different
All the-
names and
the-
stuff?
The Vosges?
Or boats, yeah.
No. That's why I eliminated, if we had, I would have included panderers, simoniacs, veriters, seducers, and sorcerers. Those were all Vosges, but we didn't read them, yeah.
Should we know which animals line up with which symbols?
Yes.
now? Should we know what each animal represents?
Yes. And that would be some great, and there's some listing you're gonna have to do. You know, I don't think I'm gonna ask you to list this, not here. I could, that could be the test, list all 24 sections of hell. If it were me, I would study those 24 sections. I'd be able to do that for myself. I might ask it to you, I'm not gonna tell you exactly, but, that would be great, if you could do that, man, you would know yourself that you understood this book. So how do you do, think of the numbers 7, 3, 10, and 4. If you can say, what does that 7 represent, what do those 3 represent, what do the 10 represents, what do the 4 represent, then you've done it. So if you remember those 4 numbers and what they add up to. And there are a lot of ways to ask these questions. You know, I could ask them the opposite of the way we're talking about them now. Like, you'd say, tell me about the 8 circle. And you tell me about it. Or I could say, which circle has the 10 Vosges? You know, that may be the opposite way to ask for that. A couple of things I would really like for you to remember, and it's already on here. I guess this goes back to we don't need to remember these, right? Exactly what they are. But we did need to know these 7, these 3, and these 4. Especially these 7 and these 3. Be able to explain what the sin is and why the punishment fits the sin. You know, be able to explain why the people, as Ben just did, underwater in the river of Styx. Why is that appropriate for people that hold in their anger? Why are people being blown about in the lust circle? Why are they pushing boulders in the hoarder spendthrift section? Why are they running in burning sand being pelted by fire? You know, those are the punishments. Be able to explain why those punishments are appropriate for the sin. And either here or later, one of the questions I can imagine putting on the exam, which is just 2 weeks away, right? Well, one of the questions I can ask you is to explain why do you care? Well, you may not care, but my job always has been to tell you why you should care about this book. How does this book at all impact my life? I think that's one of the problems people have with learning. I'll never have to use, don't tell anybody I said this, but I probably said algebra. That's not true. Depending on what you go into it, algebra is fundamental. But you might think, I'm never going to use algebra or geometry, so why do I have to learn it? Well, I hope you never, ever say that about what we do in humanities, because if you've been paying any attention, this story is about you and me. And that's what I mean when I say this book is an allegory. Remember, it's the story of Dante going through hell, and why is he going through hell? What's the reason he's
fell.
going through hell? Yeah.
He said he's like on the wrong path and he wants to get closer to God, and then Virgil like teaches him to go down to hell with him.
Okay, we're halfway there, but why hell? Why specifically does he have to go through hell to get to God? That's counterintuitive, right? I go up, that's what he tried to do, right? He tried to go straight to God up the hill, couldn't do it. And so against his common sense, you gotta go down before you can go up, yeah.
So he can see his own sin, and understand like the problem sin.
That's the reason we don't have a relationship with God. If you don't, it's because of sin. You, me. And so this Dante is you and me. What do you have to do to get your relationship with God refreshed? You got to confess your sin. And so Dante has to, and this is sort of his way of saying, I see this is a sin, this is sin. Our pastor likes to say, you're not as sinful as you could be. You've never killed anybody, I hope. I hope you never will kill anybody. I hope. None of us ever do. The odds are very small. Are you capable of killing somebody? That's the question. And the answer is, given different circumstances, the answer is always yes. And so that's why this is useful. You may not have committed all 24 sins. Give yourself time. Grow up, give yourself 10 years, and you may have committed some more. But that's why this story is an allegory. It's about Dante. Remember, allegories have two meanings, right? Literal and figurative. So the literal meaning is what you see on paper. Climbing down fire and hail and all that those things. If you think those are literally true, that's what part of the allegory does. The other part tells us what we just said about sin. So those are two big questions that we'll probably go even beyond tomorrow's test into the exam. This is the last 10 minutes before we take the test. So, do you have any last questions? Oh, I wanted to tell you about the last part, and I think, let me just, can I tell you this? I'll tell you this. I don't know if I've asked. Oh, don't forget the terminology. Don't forget some of those, you need to look at that. You know, tercets, and remember there was a whole list. I don't think I've included a lot of that. And I don't see it right now on the review sheet, but you need to know tercet, terzarama, triad, allegory is on that list. Canto. The only one you wouldn't remember is periphrasis. I don't think I've asked you that, right? But don't forget those terms, because all of them have to do with the number 3. 3 lines, chapters, and so forth. Make sure you study that. So, last question, Jeff.
Oh, I was gonna ask, the thing you're about to tell us, is that gonna be on
Say that
the
again?
test? The stuff you're about to tell us, is that gonna be on?
Yeah, well, let me tell you, I'm not sure if it is. I want you to write it down and know it. It's not much, but I just want to tell you that when they get to the bottom circle of hell, I just want to tell you what happens is, it's a frozen river. And the only thing I really want to tell you, I hate to do this without reading it, because it kind of gives it away, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Satan is ensconced or encased in ice from the waist up. And we'll see that. And he has a face. Well, he has 3 faces. Yeah, I'm probably not going to ask you all this, but I need to tell you. The 3 faces are chewing 3 people. And you should know what those 3 people are, who we talked about. Who are the 3 people that are being eaten by Satan? We've talked about. Who was the worst person ever to live? That's not fair, but pretty close. The church would always say this is the worst person ever. Yes, Judas. But who are the other 2 worst people? Because they're all kind of equal here. Remember what I told you?
Plus,
They're the 2 people that killed Julius Caesar. That is Brutus and Cassius. So for the Romans, that was the worst thing ever happened, was the killing of Julius Caesar. Yeah.
Who was the other one? Brutus and who?
Brutus Cassius. You ever heard of him? Y'all never read this?
yeah.
Wait,
They wrong.
Right there.
I said Cassius.
I did.
Oh,
Cassius,
I thought it was Cassius.
Brutus, they wrong. See, we're having trouble hearing me too. We are having trouble hearing each other.
It's kind of early in the morning, having like blood pressure.
When I order something at a drive-in, they can't hear me. Of course, I'm at a machine, I don't have it on, but when I talk to them at the window, they don't, what? I have to. All right, so they're being eaten. I will not ask you this, I want you to write down. It'll be on the test or the exam. I just think it's interesting and unique. Yep. All right, I'm gonna write this. I'll write it so you. Satan. Colorful. I always forget their name. Shem, Ham, who's the third brother? I won't ask you this, Mom, I want you to write down. We could, you remember who the third brother of Noah was, third son of Noah? Shem, okay, I'm pretty sure I'm right about it. If we had time, we can do this Thursday. I will replace that question. I'll give you a heads up about it. So Satan has three faces. Why three? Because he had three sons. Noah did. The world comes from two people, Adam and Eve, right? But then everybody was wiped out except Noah. So Noah had three sons. And those three sons were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. I put them in that order. You ever heard those names before? Okay, well, Japheth is generally considered to be the father of Europe. Shem is considered the father of Asia, including the Middle East, including the Israelites. Ever heard the word anti-Semitic? You ever heard that? It means anti-Jewish? Well, Semitic goes back to the word Shem. So in an odd, strange way, the Arabs and the Jews are from the same family. Of course, they've hated each other for years. And then Africa represented by the brother Ham. So I'm not going to ask you that, but you will need to know that beyond this to the test. And you need to know about the rivers, so you'll need to know that. Yeah, a lot of stuff here, but remember the format's going to help you, but don't take it for granted that you still need to study, and there'll be some short answer, as I said, specifically about dates, and I'm just looking at some of those now. Oh, anybody remember the difference between simple and complex fraud?
Simple fraud is when you like trick someone without the intention of hurting the person. So like if you rob someone for like the money, but
And you don't know the person, if it's simple fraud, that's important, you don't know them very well. You don't know them at all, maybe you know them slightly, and you've seen them before, but that's simple fraud, it's not personal. The other is very personal, yeah.
It's like simple if you're not doing it just to, for the, like, to hurt the person, you're doing it for yourself.
Well, that's what she said, but don't add, again, it's not personal. You're hurting them. You don't really care if you hurt them. You just don't know them ahead of time. It's, you know, like, I'm hurting you because of you. No, I'm hurting you, I don't even know you. I know it's gonna hurt you, but I don't care because I don't know you. That's somehow less bad than if I know you and I still hurt you. That makes it worse. You know that, that's common sense. A friend doing that to you is a lot worse than some stranger. All right, well, I know you're gonna do fine, just study it, and if you have any questions tomorrow morning or this afternoon, please ask.